I'm sorry, but this is crazy. I'm like on this stage like I am some kind of preacher. So we're getting started. Are we recording, fam? Oh, okay, great. You're listening to Off Color, a podcast where we've been hosting uncomfortable conversations about race and identity since 2017. I'm your host, Rebecca Henderson, aka the Tan Tigress. That's my little brand. I like to say that because I'm half black and half white, and what I lack in melanin, I make up in militant. We are about to be blessed by one of my favorite singers. She is going to be performing at the 5 Points Jazz Festival, May 18th. At the Rossonian, which I don't know if people are aware that 5 Points used to be known as the Harlem of the West. And so we are very, very lucky today. And in addition to that, I just wanted to let people know that the song that our singer, I'm really building it up here. The song that our singer will be singing is entitled Juneteenth, and we are currently in the process. We have an Indiegogo set up. So if you could take a peek at that, if you have questions about it, we're trying to make sure that she can get vinyl pressings made to be a commemorative album for the opening of the Rossonian. Sorry if I'm like bungling that. Uh-oh, there's no editing on this one either. Sorry, guys. Okay. So, with further ado, I present the fantastic, the beautiful, la reina de canciones, Jeanette Hollowell.
Thank you for that awesome introduction. Yes, if you find yourself in 5 Points, May 18th, around 11:30 a.m., I'll be singing at the Rossonian. It's a free song called Juneteenth that I wrote. And here it goes. Pretty brown mamas kissing their babies, driving them crazy, wondering maybe how will they grow? How will they grow? Pretty brown girls sucking their teeth and moving their hips and keeping the beat, and oh how they glow, oh how they glow. And I never seen so many beautiful faces. Immortal light in third eye places. Never seen so many beautiful faces. Proud black man pressing their chest and holding their ground and doing their best, and fist in the air, fist in the air. Bright dark boy keeping it lit, fresh as his fit, about to get rich, and what does he care? What does he care? And I never seen so many beautiful faces. Immortal light in third eye places. Never seen so many beautiful faces. Look at God, look at God, look at God. Chocolate chai, chocolate chai, chocolate chai. Who am I, who am I, who am I? Turkey thigh, turkey thigh, turkey thigh. Chocolate chai, chocolate chai, chocolate chai. Who am I, who am I, who am I? Look at God, look at God, look at God. Turkey thigh, turkey thigh, turkey thigh. Never seen so many beautiful faces. Immortal light in third eye places. All right, Juneteenth, that's the song. Thank you so much. If you like it, I hope you will donate to my Indiegogo so that I can afford to have that printed on wax. Is like my goal is to get some real records of that song. So, anyways.
to the stage our first guest, Jeanette Vizguerra. Come on up, Jeanette. So a little bit, I'm just going to talk really briefly. Yeah, get up here, White James. Sorry, that's what we call White James, because he's white. Okay. I wanted to let people know. Oh. Pasa. Gloria, this is the best organized off-color. It's our first bilingual off-color experience. But I wanted to, for people who are not familiar with the show, usually I'm quite drunk while doing it, but not today, Satan, not today. We are in church, and then also I looked up because I thought, oh, maybe we can have mimosas, that'll be nice, fundraising, and I looked it up, and then I was really super concerned about doing anything that would possibly be improper or that would bring any kind of law enforcement. I just got really nervous because if you don't know that Jeanette is actually living inside the First Unitarian Church of Denver in sanctuary as she fights her deportation case. So we're really honored to be able to have her with us today to speak and talk to us about her case and kind of and then we're gonna, so this is a little different than our regular off-color. It's a little more serious, and obviously I'm a little less drunk. So we are going to just kind of have a conversation, and then we have another guest who will be participating in the second half of our conversation, and then we'll also open it up to Q&A. How does that sound? We're going to try to keep it really tight. We are absolutely done at 2:30. Oh, I can see the clock. You're not going to go, caw.
I can still, just for fun.
Okay, all right, okay. So that's fantastic. So we're 5 minutes in, guys. And I'm not sure that I have used this time appropriately. All right, so, Jeanette, can you introduce yourself and can you kind of give us a quick summary of your case and tell us your story? Is that okay?
Hi everyone, my name is Jeanette Vizguerra. I'm from Mexico City. I'm activist for 24 years, long 24 years, for labor rights, immigrant rights, human rights, and civil rights. I'm fighting my case for 11 long years, 11 years. In this moment,
I'm sorry, 11 years?
11
Girl,
years.
I did not even know it had been that long.
Yeah, I'm ready. In 2009, they have very difficult legislation here in Colorado. Is 280G, SB 90, and community securities as the police and ICE as they work together. Very much people enter in the system only for not have driver license. This is my case. For not have driver license, I'm ready in an immigration proceeding. And this moment is long 11 years.
So you are saying to me that you are getting deported for not having a driver's license? That's what happened?
Yes. Not only me, hundreds of people is in the same situation. And this part is very difficult. I'm ready. I'm the founder of the movement for immigrant rights here in Colorado. My decision later, I'm leaving the detention center as somebody I need to take action. Somebody I need to put your voice, your face. I'm ready. Every time I'm ready for fighting for different issues that affected my community. In these next years, I continue looking option, continue looking solution not only for me, for other person. And this time, in 2013, I founded the Metro Denver Sanctuary Coalition. And this moment, I have 30 churches. 4 churches as the Westbed. In this moment, I have other 2 ladies in Sanctuary, one in Boulder, and one here the same in Denver. Every time I'm looking solution, every time I'm funded different movements, the same I create the movement for abolish ICE Denver. I blocked one time the principal office in Centennial. It's a little scary, a little the same funny. For eyes have scared me. Only one lady, a little crazy lady, and looking solution and pushing the system have very much events a little heavy.
So right now, is ICE like looking for you, or are they here? Like, what's?
I'm a target for put my voice very strong, my face, for continue pushing the system. I'm target for activists, for put my voice every time very strong. Not only local, as national level. For example, later that this show, I have other presentation from New York for National Sanctuary Movement, have very much a coalition, the different parts, the nation. And continue organizing here. My work no stop here. My life no stop here. I'm continue organizing, educate, continue looking solutions.
So how many people are in sanctuary now that you are working with, like in the country?
Around the nation is close 100. Maybe 15 is public, and 15 not public.
Okay. So are they in Unitarian churches or like just different faiths?
Is every coalition around the country is multi-faith. I have churches, the different congregation or different nominations. This is Unitarian. I have Baptists, Quakers, and Methodists, and Jude churches.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can I ask you what has been the hardest part of this fight?
Oh my gosh. It's my second, real is my 3 time in sanctuary. The first time is in 2050, only for short time, 10 days, but no es public, it's for a strategy. For 10 days is very fast. The last time is 86 days. And this moment is close to months. I don't know for what, and this moment is very hard for me. My emotion is crazy. Sometimes I'm a little funny. I'm bipolar. Some days it's very happy, very energy, and some days it's very down. Very emotional. I miss my life. I miss my kids. I miss my cats. It's the same explain. Sometimes it's the same one beer. My life in the streets is fly. Different parts this city at this moment is one beer and one cash. Stop my life.
Yeah. Well, I'm so sorry that this is happening, but I'm also really grateful that we're able to be with you today and to share your story, like beyond this room, because we'll be putting this out to the world, and I'm really happy to be able to at least do that for you. What else can we do for you?
Yeah, thank you for this space. For me, it's very important. Continue educate the people continue listen the voices, not only my voices, the others, hundreds, millions of persons around the country. The immigration system is the one real problem. And not only the person fighting in the streets. And the detention center in this moment have more than 700 persons detained. The immigration system have one quota for day. For each person, I need pay $150. It's business. No see the person, the humans. It's business. No es one merchandise. It's human person. It's life, real persons. Life, real. They broke their life. The kids. It's very difficult problem. Everybody have one responsibility, moral responsibility for take action, for stop this problem.
So for me, this has been, knowing you and knowing your story and being friends with you has kind of opened me up a little bit more to think about it. I don't think it's something I necessarily thought about that much before, as far as immigrant rights and undocumented persons' rights and what we should be doing. because I was paying attention to that, when I had an opportunity to go and volunteer with Casa de Paz, they organize ICE visits to the ICE detention center here in Colorado, in Aurora. And I went for the first time last week.
Yeah, this is a bilingual, sometimes I need help.
Bueno, pues estoy aquí.
My
Yo
first
hablo
language
español.
is Spanish, I'm trying to speak English. Hay muchas cosas para hacer como voluntarios. Aquí en Santuario ahora necesitamos muchos voluntarios porque tenemos opciones para venir a dormir en la noche aquí, para traer comida, para ayudar a llevar los niños a la escuela.
There are many things that you can do as volunteers. Here in Sanctuary, I have a lot of needs. I need people to spend the night here as part of the security plan. We need food. I need help getting my children to school.
También tenemos gente cuidando la puerta durante el día para checar quién entra porque no todo el mundo puede entrar, que tiene que estar seguro.
We also need help at the door. We have door checkers, making sure that people who are coming in have business being here.
Y no es solo en esta iglesia, como dije, tenemos dos compañeras más, una en Boulder, una que está también aquí en Denver, y tenemos ese mismo sistema, pero muchas veces los voluntarios que ya existen están cansados y necesitamos más voluntarios de fuera.
And it's not just me, and it's not just this church. As I've told you, there are two others in Sanctuary, two other women in Sanctuary, one in Boulder, another here in Denver, and they have the same situation. They have the same needs, and they've had wonderful volunteers, but volunteers have been there now for years, and they are tired.
Ahora mismo también todas estamos haciendo estrategias en nuestros casos, alrededor de nuestros casos, y hay eventos muy seguidos donde también necesitamos apoyo, necesitamos a más voluntarios para ayudarnos con las estrategias, pero también invitar más abiertamente a que la comunidad venga y sea parte de este movimiento.
And each of us has our own strategies in our cases. And for each of them, we need volunteers to help us out with events, to get the word out so that your circles and more people learn about what's happening with us.
Entendiendo que todo está conectado. A veces decimos, ¿qué tiene que ver educación con inmigrantes? Tenemos estudiantes inmigrantes, pero también los papás de esos estudiantes somos inmigrantes. ¿Qué tiene que ver salud con inmigrantes? Por ejemplo, ahorita tenemos a Araceli que está embarazada. Ella necesita ir al doctor, pero si no rompemos este ciclo de opresión, ¿cómo vamos a tener una vida sana?
There are so many intersections in our cases. It's not just about immigration as you think about our immigration cases. So, got kids. There are education issues. Education has everything to do with immigration. There are children in our schools who have parents who are immigrants. We're immigrants. We need help. What about health? There are health barriers for everyone. Our barriers are significant. We've got Araceli, who's in church in the sanctuary over at Park Hill United Methodist Temple Micah. She's pregnant. She needs access to health care. She's going to have her baby in that church. She needs good health care.
Hay otro tema que es bien importante tocar y es salud mental. Afortunadamente algunos somos muy fuertes o nuestros hijos son muy fuertes, pero muchas veces este problema atrae problemas mentales donde a veces se habla de suicidio y nadie está hablando sobre ese tema.
And we have to talk about mental health. Gratefully, some of us have strong mental health, but this beats you down. And then we're talking about mental health issues, and we're talking about suicide as all of this affects us and our families. We need to speak up. We need to talk about it.
Cuando hablamos también de educación tenemos que mencionar que muchas veces nuestros hijos sufren bullying, porque los niños no entienden por qué nosotros estamos en esta situación y comienzan a hacerles bullying. Y tenemos que pelear también en contra del sistema de las escuelas que no están tratando el bullying de manera correcta.
And let's talk again about education, because our children in schools face bullying. Their classmates don't understand why we are in sanctuary. And our kids have to deal with bullying. And our school systems are not properly addressing these kinds of situations. That has to stop. They need to deal with it.
Pero sobre todo también hay una parte importante de tocar es sobre paternalismo blanco y machismo.
Espera. Eso es el parte luego que vamos a hablar.
Bueno.
Por favor, eso va a ser la conversación. ¿Sí está bien?
Bueno,
Okay.
bueno, eso
We're
lo
going to talk
decimos
about
después,
white
pero
supremacy and the patriarchy and
machismo.
and machismo. I don't need to translate that. Okay, so we're going to talk about that in the third half, sort of. But right now, I would like to bring up my next guest. You stay here. You don't go anywhere. But Greg Mortimer, come on up. Did you grab another?
¿Seguimos aquí o?
Sí. Quédate allí. Tighten up at the disco, Greg. All right. As always, as organized as possible. Okay, so I met Greg in person today. So we go way back.
Way back.
Oh, thanks. But actually, Greg is part of Casa de Paz, and they put out a call to have people come to visit ICE detainees at the center out in Aurora. I signed up to go. Greg and I spoke on the phone. He gave me all of the information that I needed, and it was so good and concise. I was like, hey, you want to come on my show maybe and talk about it? But I did do the initial visit. My first visit was last week, and we didn't get to talk about it, but I will say the first thing that happens is you kind of drive out to this facility. Has anyone been out there before to do it? So Dana has done it, so you're familiar. And Dave is taking my picture. How do I look? Cheese. Okay. And so it was quite emotional for me. I have never visited someone who's been incarcerated before. I've never sat down and talked on those phones through the plate glass window. The first phone I picked up was broken and didn't work, and it was pretty intense. And the person that I spoke to, that I had my visit with, and all you do is you just talk to them. It's nothing like particularly revolutionary, but it is. So for me, I had this conversation. We talked for about 30 minutes, and the man's story was so sad to me. He had got pulled over for a traffic incident, and he was being detained. He was in a facility in San Francisco for 3 years, and he's been here for another year. And the reason he's fighting his case is because he has a daughter, and he doesn't want to leave her, and he doesn't want to get deported. And it was just really heartbreaking to me. So I went home and hugged and kissed my baby, who's running around out there wild. And I just can't believe how inhumanely we are treating people who are seeking help on our shores. So I wanted to talk to you, Greg, a little bit about the work you're doing, if you want to kind of let people know some of the stats, because some of them kind of really blew my mind.
Sure. So the stats that you're talking about locally here in Aurora or across the nation?
You can start with Aurora, and then you can talk about the nation, but we're going to try to keep our time. So we have 8 minutes for this. Go.
Thank you. Now it's probably about 7:55, right? So speaking a little bit about immigration detention, and Jeanette, I just want to say it is an extreme honor to meet her after reading about you and hearing about you. Yeah. And so Jeanette had mentioned, I believe you said there's 700 folks in detention at the Aurora Detention Center. Thank you. And that was last year. Now there are just under 1,500 immigrants in the detention center. And these are folks, some of whom are seeking asylum, some of whom are seeking other legal strategies to get their liberty. But it is worth noting that this is very much something that is driven on the backs of some of the most vulnerable, oppressed people in the world. The Geo Detention Center is run by Geo, which is the second largest private prison company in the world. And after the 2016 election, the stock value for for all of the private prisons skyrocketed anywhere between 20 and 50%. The profit at the Aurora Geo Detention Center last year, in 2018 alone, was $41 million. So this year now, based on what the guards have been telling me, there are now close to twice as many people as there were last year. The number of people on staff has remained constant, and so while their income is skyrocketing, their labor costs are remaining mostly flat. So we expect that the profits there will be significantly higher in this coming year. So just briefly, across our nation, in 1994, we had approximately 6,500 immigrants in detention centers every night. In 2012, funded primarily by the private prison industry, legislation was passed that mandated that we must have at least 34,700 immigrants in detention. President Obama signed that into law, and now just within the last month or two, we have crossed over to 50,000 folks in detention every night. Last year, my understanding is I've heard different numbers, different stats. I was trying to read up on that before coming today, but I've read anywhere from 350,000 to 500,000 immigrants were held in detention centers in total last year. And it is true, this is something that is strictly for the profits of some very wealthy multinational organizations. Yes.
Oh, yes.
And so,
I just want to make sure everyone knows she said, fuck Donald Trump. Pinche Trump. I'm good at translating.
right. And so it's interesting, there's plenty of case studies to show both here in the States and also abroad. If we have folks who have crossed over into this country and they're working through the immigration system, we can very easily, much more affordably, for about $1.50 to $3 a day with ankle bracelets, keep track of folks who are working on their immigration status. And there's a very high percentage of folks who will show up very regularly for their court dates. Depending on the detention center, it's around, like you said, Jeanette, about $150 a day that we pay private prisons to house these folks. And there are over 200 privately held, or there are over 200 detention centers that are subcontracted out to these private prisons. And so what we do is, I've been volunteering with the Casa de Paz for a little over 2 years now, and so I've just been so moved by what it is to spend 1 hour with these folks in detention. The people who are in detention at Aurora, they can have, depending on where they're at in the detention center, they can have up to 4 different days when they're allowed to have visitors. On each day that they're allowed to have a visitor, they can only have one visitor, or they can only have one 1-hour visit. And for most folks, that's not a problem at all, because their entire time in the detention center, they never, ever receive a single visitor. And so just over time, about a year ago at this time, about 3 or 4 friends of myself were going every Sunday and visiting about that many immigrants, and then gradually the word has started to spread. Since that time, over 100 folks have visited with us at least once. We have approximately 45 volunteers who visit with us about at least once a month. We have folks who go in every Sunday. In fact, there's folks visiting right now as we speak. I'll be going on later this afternoon. Today we have 17 people going into the detention center, and for us that's a big deal. But if you think about it, there's about 1,500 people who will not receive a visitor, ever. And it is true, the conditions there are horrific, and we could tell one horror story after another, but we consistently hear that one of the most common topics of conversation is how folks can commit suicide, because it is so hopeless. And then depending on whom you speak with, the stories range anywhere from, at best, challenging to at worst horrific, the conditions that folks have escaped from their country, and then the trip that they took to get here, and then what they're experiencing in detention. And so one story after another, but if I can just mention one, I think it's okay to mention this. We're visiting a gentleman who's in his 70s. He was in the El Salvadorian military. He was an officer there, got crossways with some local drug lords, and so they brought 16 members of his family, his wife, his kids, his grandkids, and murdered them in front of him. Then they brutalized him, and so then somehow was able to flee to get to the United States. He's been in detention for about 7 months. One of the guards at Geo, against my understanding policy, slipped me a note and said, will you please visit this man because he's on suicide watch. And so every Sunday, myself or somebody else will go sit with him and just try our best to be present with folks who are experiencing extreme pain and trauma, et cetera. And by the way, that story that I just mentioned is not, the horrificness of that is not unusual. And I will mention that one of our friends from Cameroon, who, I don't know if you know much about Cameroon, that's a country that's quickly moving toward a state of civil war and genocide. We were visiting a man in detention for several months, and he so struck a chord with our heart that we hired an attorney. And last September, he was able to get out on bond and to wait the outcome of his case. Last Wednesday, he went for just his regular check-in with ICE. He's been staying at the home of some friends of ours. And when he went for his visit with ICE, he was taken into custody. He's back in detention, and they're beginning deportation proceedings as quickly as they can. And more than likely, this will be a death sentence for him. So none of those things are unusual at all. And I think the toughest for us is when we go to visit, we're in the same room with different families. As little children to large children, their only way to see a parent, their father typically, is through this plexiglass window. And to just kind of watch the trauma as these families are in there at the same time as we are, and then to see these folks walk out after their one hour visit and to see folks in tears. Yeah. So I think I'm about at time, correct? Yeah.
So do you need more volunteers is what I'm also wondering.
We can always use more volunteers, always.
Yeah.
Yes, and so, yeah.
So if people do want to volunteer, and Jeanette, you have...
Yeah, the other part is very important mention. Some people sometimes try help the person here and fighting your cases in the streets. But I need to remember that in this detention I have hundreds of people, sometimes not have family here in Colorado. Yeah, I need support, donate $20 for your phone, for call to your families. Sometimes your family is very, very late, in other states. Every time the people say, I need support the families here. Yes, it's correct. But I need to remember this person is here in the detention center. The situation in the detention center is very, very bad. I'm here in this detention for 3 times. I remember one specific time my kids go visit me. Zurich only have close 2 years. As the sheep put in the glass, mommy open and I need kiss you. Yes, very difficult time. Imagine the person who have family here is what is the day I'm see other time my kids or my wife or my husband. It's very difficult. The people the same, I need fighting for this person. I need fighting for close this detention center. In not only this detention, I have other jails, local jails, work together for this detention. It's very important that people remember this person is here.
Thank you. How are you guys feeling? A little low? This is the time when we'd be drinking, but
Yeah.
since we're not drinking...
I have one bottle.
Since we're not currently drinking, I did want to kind of move into a little bit of the next piece of this. If people want to volunteer, though, what's a good website or anything like that?
Right, I should have memorized the URL for Casa de Paz, but I believe it's casadepazcolorado.org. And even if that turns out to be the wrong URL, just Google it. You should be able to find it very, very easily. Yeah.
And Jeanette, do you have a recommendation for a website?
Metro Denver Sanctuary Coalition pay the same as possible. They don't have time for volunteer as possible. Donate something. Casa de Paz and Metro Denver Sanctuary Coalition is the more very important organization here
Sorry, I want to make
Metro,
sure.
Denver Sanctuary Coalition.
Sanctuary
Sanctuary.
or sanctuary?
Sanctuary.
Sorry, girl. You know, I have a New
Sanctuary
York
Coalition. Is there, for example, Sanctuary Coalition help and support families for a little part of the money for your legal costs. It's the same Casa de Paz provide food, clothes, every person I needed later leaving the detention center. As the organization support more direct the affected families or affected person. Donate for Casa de Paz or donate for Metro Denver Sanctuary Coalition.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so this was one of the things I wanted to talk about, and I hope it's okay, and especially in this space that we're in, which is the First Unitarian Society of Denver, located at 1400 Lafayette Street. And I also want to thank them so much for hosting us and allowing us to be in the space. I was at the, is this working? Yeah. I was at the service this morning, and they did mention that they are at a deficit on their budget, and almost they give half of whatever they make goes to nonprofits to support social justice efforts, immigration. This is a really good organization to support. If you are interested in doing that, you can write a check, I guess, to them. That's what they said, or just drop it off, or I don't know, toss it through the window. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just give them that money. And I think May 4th, you guys have an action, correct? Okay, May the 4th be with you. They're gonna have an auction and a fundraiser, so you can, and also check that out. So and I also wanted to just mention my own connection to this particular space. One is the last time I was in this room for a presentation, it was for Waking Up White with the author, what's her name? Helen? Anyway, that's what it was. And we were here with the late, great Dr. Gregory Diggs and his brother Brian Diggs, who was visiting, and my husband Ken was here, and our son Kingston, and we're all here again, and Greg is not, but he is. So I just wanted to, praise him just a little bit. And speaking of Greg Diggs, one of the things that Greg always said was we need to use our words, and we need to be able to talk about really uncomfortable things sometimes. And something that has come up consistently, and I think also being here in a church that is predominantly white, this idea of good intentions from white people, and how sometimes you think you're being a good ally, but maybe you're not. ¿Me entiendes?
Yes.
So,
Perfect.
Yeah. So that was something that I think I just kind of wanted to open up and have a little discussion about that. I want people to be ready to kind of receive that, even if it upsets you or makes you feel some kind of way. So is everybody okay? All right then. No, sorry. Okay, so that's something that has definitely come up. Actually, White James over here told me a story that, would you mind sharing that story about your school? What happened? Sure. Thank you. White James, everybody.
I normally produce the show, and so I usually look really busy over here, but the Unitarian Church has this amazing sound system, and they're even recording for us, so I don't actually have any work to do, so that's kind of why I'm awkwardly sitting here half behind the podium right now. No, Rebecca and I were just sort of discussing a few days ago what we would talk about today, and some of the subjects we wanted to get into. And yeah, I was just generally talking about my experiences trying to be part of the PTA, they call it PEAK now, at my daughter's school, which is a very, very ethnically and nationally diverse school, but has pretty much an all-white PTA. And the PTA meetings are just endless, hour-long conversations among white people about why only white people show up. And that's kind of like all they really seem to be able to get to. But when suggestions are made about maybe doing multilingual send-outs and things that would create more outreach, there's this sort of defensiveness of just, this is the way that we've done it, and that's a lot of extra work, and blah, 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 blah. So I don't know if I remember a specific story, but that's emblematic of something that I run into a lot if we're talking about this sort of well-intentioned white space thing of that I've spent a lot of hours in rooms full of white people all bemoaning the fact that only white people are in the room, but seemingly incapable of doing anything about it. That's been my experience at a lot of activist circles, progressive circles, political circles, just childcare circles, et cetera. And so I'm interested to know if anyone on the panel has anything to say about that or reflections on that or experiences with that.
Bueno, creo que lo primero que tiene que entender la sociedad es que este país es multirracial, multife, multigender. No sé por qué se habla siempre de supremacía blanca. Es algo que tenemos que seguir peleando a pesar de que pasan los años y que la gente se supone que tienen estudios, que tienen títulos, que tienen una mentalidad amplia, no terminan de entender que este país es multirracial.
Well, our starting point is this is a multiracial, multi-faith, multi-gender society. And yet, we're always dealing with white supremacy. And we need to go back and remember we are multiracial.
En mi experiencia a lo largo de los años trabajando en este trabajo, me he encontrado con muchas cosas y hablaba con Rebeca de que todavía me toca no solo luchar mi propio caso, sino me toca luchar en contra todavía de racismo y de discriminación por género y por origen.
Well, I've been fighting my case for a long time, and I constantly have to fight racism and
De género.
I was really machismo. I wanted to say it as clearly as possible. I mean, dealing with gender issues, it's constant. It always comes back to that.
Es un ejemplo, soy mujer, soy inmigrante, soy de color y muchas veces la sociedad piensa que por ser inmigrante no tengo la capacidad de dirigir algo o de hacer algo porque piensan que los inmigrantes somos ignorantes o que no tenemos estudio.
I'm an immigrant woman of color, and I find so many times that people assume that because I'm an immigrant woman of color that I'm not smart enough. I can't speak for myself, and I can.
Y muchos hombres se sienten intimidados de que una mujer de color inmigrante quiera tomar decisiones o esté lista para dirigir un movimiento, porque están acostumbrados a tomar las decisiones, a mandar en las cosas que se necesitan hacer, pero yo he decidido que mis movimientos van a ser dirigidos por inmigrantes y por gente de color.
So many times men are going to assume that an immigrant woman of color cannot direct a movement. I can do it. Our movements must be led by the people of color who are affected. And I constantly have to deal with the men, the white men who think I can't.
Otra parte que pasa es en nosotros como comunidad latina somos a veces doblemente discriminados. Porque a mí me ha costado muchos años poder entrar al círculo de la comunidad afroamericana, al círculo de comunidad nativa americana, porque los afroamericanos muchas veces también nos discriminan porque no quieren mucho a los latinos.
Well, it's a complicated issue because as a Latina, I find that other communities don't don't think well of us. So it's been difficult for me to work with, at times, the African American community or with the Native American community because of their not understanding us, our culture.
Pero he tenido la capacidad de ser paciente, de entender sus raíces, también entender su cultura, y poco a poco me he ido introduciendo en todos los movimientos de todas las razas, no solo aquí en Colorado, sino en otros lugares, y ahora me siento aceptada, pero fue mucho trabajo para poder ser incluida en ciertos movimientos.
It's been hard, but I've been patient, and so by understanding the roots and their movements, I've been able to, little by little, build the confidence and work with other movements of color as well.
Pero creo que la parte más importante es que tenemos que buscar una solución para acabar con ese paternalismo blanco, la supremacía blanca, entender que muchos de nosotros sí somos originales de este continente. Tenemos a veces también mezclas. En mi caso tengo raíces indígenas mexicanas, pero también tengo raíces europeas por el lado de mi madre. Y cuando a mí me dicen debes ir a tu tierra, a tu país o lárgate, es como, bueno, haz tus maletas y vete a Europa, porque este es mi continente.
Well, when my roots are here in this continent, and many of us are mixed. So I have indigenous blood, and so when people say to me, go back to your own country, I say, pack your bags.
Entonces, son muchas cosas con las que uno tiene que navegar. En mi caso no es solo discriminación por gente blanca, sino por otras cosas que tenemos que navegar. Y ahora los latinos es a los que más nos están discriminando, nos están persiguiendo, la opresión del gobierno, pero necesitamos aliados, y cuando decimos aliados, significa que nosotros vamos a decir qué necesitamos. No es que vamos a mandar a la gente, pero aliados significa van a apoyar nuestras decisiones, nuestro movimiento. Eso es ser parte de aliado. No son los que van a decidir, no son los que van a dirigir.
As immigrants, we need to fight against the many forms of discrimination that come at us, and that includes among Latinos. So sometimes some of the worst discrimination we face is from other non-immigrant Latinos, and we need allies. But when we talk about allies, we welcome anyone who isn't working under the mantle of white supremacy, the white patriarchy, but when we say allies, you walk with us, we lead.
Entonces, a veces, como dijo Rebeca, sabemos que lo hacen de buena intención, con la mejor intención de ayudar y de apoyar, pero muchas veces hay actitudes que dañan, que lastiman, que ofenden, y deben de ver cuando dicen una palabra o con una actitud, cómo es que lo hacen y lo dicen porque sí nos dañan. En esa intención buena de querernos apoyar, también nos lastiman.
Good-intentioned allies can hurt us, can damage us. They come to help, but paternalistic help hurts.
Creo que tengo la fortuna de tener una voz y un carácter fuerte, entonces yo sí puedo navegar con eso y parar a la gente y decir basta. Yo puedo tomar mis decisiones, soy una persona adulta que tiene la capacidad, pero no todas las personas tienen esa habilidad. Entonces deciden por ellos, hacen que la gente haga las cosas como ellos quieren, y no es así.
I have the good fortune of having a strong voice, being fierce, an understatement. But there are others who are more timid. And so when the allies come along, they can take advantage of them. I can put a stop to it.
Hay muchas cosas más de hablar, no terminamos este show, pero tenemos que seguir trabajando en contra de eso, del paternalismo, del paternalismo blanco, la discriminación. Creo que eso va a durar por años.
This is a long struggle. It's not ending soon. We'll continue it. The fight against white supremacy, paternalism, and white paternalism.
Okay, so Greg asked if he could say something, so I'm going to let him.
Greg.
Thank you. I appreciate it as a white man having permission, honestly, from a woman of color. This is a topic that does hit very close to home for me, and if I can briefly share just a bit of a personal story on this point. My wife and I are white, and we moved to the Denver area in 2000, and we lived in Lakewood in a very white neighborhood and started commuting to a small church in northeast Denver in the Five Points area in 2000, near 30th and Franklin. And so the majority population of the church was African American and Latin American immigrant. And the pastor there is a friend of mine, remains a mentor of mine to this day, Ted Travis, who's an African American who grew up in Long Island, has been in northeast Denver for about 40 years. So at one point he asked me, he said, Greg, when are you going to stop doing drive-by ministry? When are you going to move to the neighborhood? And this was before much gentrification had happened there. When are you going to move there so that the crime problems there become your crime problems and the failing schools become your failing schools? And we live almost exactly halfway between Manual and Cole. And so my wife and I thought about it for a couple of years, and we finally took the plunge. We moved in to just a couple blocks from there, 30th and Lafayette. And my friend Ted said, as we were getting ready to move, he said, don't come in there as a white savior. We have enough of y'all. What I need you to do is move into the neighborhood and shut up. Don't be a white person with your programs and all that. And please know this, the majority of people who live in the neighborhood at that time was about 80% mix of African American and Latin American immigrants. He said, you need to understand, they understand you far better than you understand them. You've been a part of a majority of culture your whole life. You don't even have to know that there are other cultures. The folks in this neighborhood have to be at least bicultural, perhaps bilingual to have any sort of success in the world. So come in, meet your neighbors, take a learner's posture, and maybe sometime after you've had a little bit of soak time, you might learn how to do a little bit of good in the neighborhood alongside your friends who understand the neighborhood far better than you. And so we did that in early 2004. And that's a Crips neighborhood. And gradually there's a number, Crips neighborhood plus a lot of Latin American immigrants. Gradually my wife and I have been doing our best to try to understand different cultures in our own and get to know folks. For 7 years, I tried to establish some sort of trust and friendship with Crips members of my neighborhood and got nowhere until Memorial Day 2011. That Sunday, that weekend, there was a retaliatory and gang shooting in the park next to my house. A man was shot 7 times in the face and chest and died instantly. So on Memorial Day morning, I walked over to the park. There were 3 Crips members, and I asked him, was that your friend who died last night? And my friend Rudo, who's become a friend to this day, said, what the fuck is it to you? I said, well, I live in that house and I'm your neighbor, so I came to express my condolences. And so finally, for the first time in 7 years, some of the layers of distrust started to melt away. And I finally said, you guys are having barbecues here all the time. Can I grab my friends? We'll throw you a barbecue. He said, no, you don't want to do that. I said, well, why? And he said, because the white people will hate you. By the way, all the white people in my neighborhood at that time were progressive Obama supporters. I said, no, that's not true. And he says, try me. So I finally convinced him we should do a barbecue that day. And he's right. I walked up and down 2 blocks in my neighborhood. Every single white person told me I was an idiot. But finally, Rudo put the word out to his community. We had a barbecue that day. 60 members from his community, about 5 or 6 white people, and that has gradually grown to now there's a community garden there. We're told it's about the most diverse community garden in Denver. My wife is the one who kind of manages that. And my Crips friends and former Crips friends are the most avid gardeners that we have there. And every autumn, we have this barbecue for the neighborhood. And the folks who absolutely get the idea that we've got to come together and who are passionate about that are my African American friends. And so I'm not saying that my wife and I are doing any good, but what I am saying is that continually, as my friend Ted Travis says, white people need to work really hard to make room for the voice of the indigenous and he defines the indigenous as people from cultures other than the majority culture, and he is absolutely right. It is so damn hard as a white person to shut up and listen and learn.
I feel like I had no idea you were going to tell that story, and now I really like you, Greg. Yeah. No, but that's because as you were saying that, I think that's the most important thing, is that it takes time and it takes energy and it takes effort to become a part of a community. And if people are willing to do that, then I think we're gonna get along a lot better, and we're gonna make more changes if we're able to do that. That term, the white saviorism, has been something that I literally said in 2018. I had a moratorium on white friends. I was not going to have any more white friends added into my circle during 2018 because I could not take it anymore. I was so exhausted from it. 2019 is a new year. I am accepting applications. You must be, and I determine if you are an acceptable level of wokeness, and you can't argue with me on that. I determine that. So if you're interested, sign up for the mailing list at tantigress.com. All right, so before we start to wrap it up, I want to know if people have any questions or comments. Don't all speak at once. I want some questions or comments. Oh, good.
Let's see if this will work out here.
If you want to visit at the detention center, do you need to be able to speak Spanish?
Discúlpenme. No, you don't need to. We visit folks, English speakers, Spanish speakers. We've also have been visiting some folks who speak only Hindi, French, but regardless of the language that you speak, we have room for you.
Sometimes have interprets the same in the detention center. They are only the people I need see persons. Explain early that some people don't have family here. You hope is that, one person come and visit me. I'm important for somebody. Yeah.
Just show up, right? We're just going to show up because that's what we have to do sometimes. And that was something Dr. Diggs always said, and how he was always so involved was because he said, I just show up. I don't always, doesn't have to be my thing. I can just show up. So I think that's super important. I also want to know does anyone have any other questions that you wanted to ask? Yes. Uh-oh. Get it right, James.
Jeanette, if we want to come and visit you, can we just show up, or what's the best that we can do for you?
Sometimes everybody have my contact. Only I need call, I need go visit you wherever day, wherever time. I'm available, I'm happy. Welcome everybody.
Okay. And what do you need the most from us?
Personal staff, sometimes, in this moment, explain the person here in Sanctuary is the gift cards for groceries, or sometimes maybe cash for continue pay my bills. I'm continue create events here for take money.
Okay, great.
Other question?
Yeah.
I just wanted to say I'm part of the folks that try and support Jeanette here. And we need folks to spend the night here. We have people spending the night every night to make sure Jeanette feels safe and people watching the door. So that's another way you can help out. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. All right.
Y otra parte que es importante, quiero seguir creciendo la comunidad alrededor de esta iglesia. Tener un círculo de respuesta rápida fuera de la iglesia, también eso me va a ayudar.
There's another goal that I have, and that is to enlarge the community around this church. looking to create a strong rapid response team so that if anything should happen, people who live around here could quickly get to the church.
All right, so you threw down a lot of statistics for us to, open our eyes to what's going on. What can we do effectively in our way that we vote, in the way that we talk to our legislators, our city council members? We're having elections soon. What are we looking for? Who provides endorsements to people that can support our ideals of changing the systems in our communities?
Ok, muy buena pregunta. Sabemos que ahorita estamos en otro tipo de gente corriendo para diferentes posiciones. Yo personalmente quiero decir, ahorita yo no estoy apoyando a nadie, porque en las elecciones pasadas apoyé a mucha gente. Se preguntarán, ¿cómo apoyaste si tú no votas? Pero muevo mucha gente que vota. Entonces, desafortunadamente, muchas personas que ayudamos a llegar ahora al poder, uno de ellos es el gobernador Jeanette Vizguerra, ahora nos está dando la espalda. Y así muchas personas a quien ayudamos a estar ahí. Entonces, cuando nosotros vamos a endorsar, a patrocinar o a apoyar sus campañas, tenemos que hacer que firmen compromisos claros de que lo que están diciendo lo van a cumplir cuando estén en el Capitolio.
Very good question. I will tell you that right now I am not endorsing candidates, and here's why. Last time around, I was very involved. You might say, you can't vote. What did you do? I can influence people. I can talk to people. And many people showed up to support candidates that have turned their backs on us. And an example is Governor Jared Polis, who has turned his back on what he said he would do. So it is critically important to be sure that whatever we're asking, they are signed on to, and that we're going to be able to hold them to it.
Es un ejemplo, el gobernador en el pasado decía una cosa, ahora su posición es diferente. Entonces, cuando los candidatos cambian de decisiones por intereses propios, él se preguntará, pero yo te apoyé, es su deber como servidores públicos. No nos están haciendo un favor, están haciendo su trabajo. Si él me apoyó porque era su deber, pero yo también lo apoyé en su campaña y ahora mi trabajo es hacer que él haga su trabajo correctamente para mi comunidad.
This example of Jared Polis, for him to say now, look, I did right by you, that's his job. That was his job as an office holder, as congressman, and it's his job now. So we're not going to let anyone who tells us one thing when they're running for office, and then they get in office, and then it's about their own personal interests, we're not going to let them get away with it.
Bueno, gracias, Jeanette. No sé si tienes algo más, pero lo que pasa es que, mira, ya llegamos tarde, como siempre. Okay? So we're gonna wrap it up because I'm always trying to keep it tight and it's always too long. Yeah, did you want to add anything, Greg?
Nothing to add. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. White James, you got anything to add?
I'm good.
Yeah, that's what I like to hear. White guys just being like, nope, I have nothing to add. All right, so check us out. We're really hoping to get some more followers on our little Twitter. We have Off Color Pod on Twitter. The website for Off Color is www.offcolorpod.com. This is a Tan Tigress production. And if you want to support our work, get on the interwebs and give us the money.